Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
There you go.
Live.
Check, check. Mic check, check.
Live.
Yes.
We in there. We in that thing.
Welcome to Let Your Words Count, where we explore the meanings behind the words that shape our lives. All right.
Wow. That was adorable.
Chat GPT.
I like
Wasn't
that.
mine. I'm Gary Gant here with Michael Wilson, Ethan Merriweather, and we are here for Let Your Words Count. Thank you for joining us. We did a double episode today, and today's word will be responsibility. Responsibility. Definition of the word is responsibility refers to the state of being accountable for something or someone and the obligation to take ownership of one's actions, decisions, and their consequences. Responsibility refers to the state of being accountable for something or someone and the obligation to take ownership of one's actions, decisions, and their consequences. You have the etymology.
Actions, decisions, consequences.
So the etymology here, the word responsibility comes from, let's see right here, the Latin word respondere, meaning to answer or reply. The term evolved into its modern sense of being accountable or liable for something. That is the etymology for responsibility.
So it grew from response being an answer to answering for your own actions. Right? Awesome.
And that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in. It's like,
Oh, man. That's funny.
always drink responsibly.
Anybody have any opening thoughts on responsibility?
The way that I think about responsibility is I think of responsibility in things in terms of like you mentioned the word accountability or
Yes.
accountable. I hold those two words very, very closely,
Definitely.
and it just seems serendipitous that one is used in a definition of the other. But yeah, I think that being accountable and learning how to be responsible, there you go. That's what I'm going for. Okay. I think that responsibility is something that can be learned and developed in terms of having a sense of being responsible for one's actions. What is it? Actions.
Decisions and their consequences.
Yeah, actions and decision.
Ooh, that's a tough word.
And that's our show.
Words
ladies and
are
gentlemen.
hard.
Yeah. Actions, decisions, and then the consequences that come from those actions and decisions. Maintaining an awareness of that is the essence of being responsible. Being responsible means that, I realize that there's a consequence if I sleep or stay in bed an extra 20, 30 minutes when I should be up. But if I consider myself to be responsible, or if I behave responsibly, I do what I need to do in order to get the results that I would prefer, the consequences that I would prefer.
Right.
And that's really all responsibility is in my mind. I mean, it's obviously it probably goes quite a bit deeper than that, but essentially it's really just making a decision about what future outcome you're looking for, what consequences you want. And then that's going to be, that'll determine how you define what you're responsible for. I don't know. Listen,
I mean,
I'm tired.
I was tired.
I feel like I just talked in a whole circle.
No, I think what you're saying is important, because when people sometimes are not allowed to experience the consequences of their actions and their words, right? There's a lesson there, right? Both in terms of cultural norms, right and wrong behavior, what's legal and what's not. There's a whole,
Gamut.
thank you, right, of consequences for actions or decisions that we could think about. So there's a lot of people that try to actively avoid the consequences for the things that they do and say. And some people are very successful in avoiding those consequences, but you have to look at what kind of human being results from not having consequences to those actions and those decisions, right? And that's the the important thing is, I think, how responsibility is a teacher, that words and actions have consequences, right? Because again, some people don't even put the two together. And I'm in this situation. Why am I all? Well, I mean, look at you're mad because you don't have money to spend, to pay a bill, but you got 5 new pairs of Jordans in the back of your closet that you just went and bought. So it's like when you don't have the money to pay your bill, you weren't responsible with what was given to you, and you weren't thinking about the consequences of you spending your your gas money, your electricity bill money, on clothes and shoes.
Yeah, I think you may have misspoke. I agree with you 100%, but I think you are still responsible.
I'm tired. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you may not have behaved in a responsible way,
Sure,
but you're
sure.
definitely
That's
still
true.
responsible
That's
for
true.
I agree with you 100%. Making the decision to behave responsibly is the whole key.
Right.
I don't know, guys. I'm having some trouble with pronouncing my
No,
words.
you're fine. I was actually thinking about while you was talking about responsibility, the word response is definitely in the word, right?
Right.
So I think that us responding to a certain action, like you said earlier, have we understood clearly what those consequences are if we are not responsible, or if we haven't clearly defined what's needed to be done at that time, whatever you're responsible for, right?
Say it one more time.
So hopefully I can say that again, right? So in the word itself of responsibility is respond. I'm responding to something. I'm responding to an action that was committed to me to get something done, right? I'm liable for that, right? And the number one word that goes along with that, what Mike was saying earlier, is about being accountable. Are you accountable? And that's a word just been thrown out so much lately.
It is.
We hear that word so much about we need to hold people accountable. And the thing is like, okay, do we understand, what are we holding people accountable for? Do they even have the wherewithal to get done what you saying they need to be responsible for? You know what I'm saying? To me, I think responsibility, a word that goes along with responsibility, is maturity. When a person is responsible,
Behaves responsibly.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No. I'm just
No,
jumping in,
but really, when you think about it, when a person is mature, consequences look differently. You see what I'm saying? When a person is responsible, consequences look differently because they are able to approach it with a clear mind, clear thought, maybe because of experiences or whatnot.
I think the difference is that a mature person expects to have to deal with the consequences of their words and actions, right? Whereas somebody that's immature either doesn't expect to or looks to escape them. Someone mature looks to, I did this, I want to be the one that faces whatever consequences arise from it. I want to make sure nobody else suffers the fallout. I want to make sure nobody else gets blamed for something that I did right or wrong. If you're mature, you want to be the one that's accountable and answering for your words and actions, and not leave it to somebody else, or not just walk away and let somebody else figure it out. I think that's the difference.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So I was thinking about like we can always bring this up, like bringing children into the world.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
We would, and I'm gonna say this word, but it's a result. Children in the world is a result of something, of an action, right?
Absolutely.
And a very immature person, many immature people have brought this soul, this little body into the world. They were not responsible of their own body and their own mind, and they went in and they had a child, laid with someone, and they had children, right? What I would like to share, if it's young ears listening, is to truly understand that responsibility is actually a wonderful thing. But I'm not sure if society has done a good job in promoting or sharing the value of responsibility. I think Mike said this in the last episode at the end was about social media. About social media is like a pill that we swallow that is actually a terrible thing for us to perform all the time. And I'm putting words in your mouth, Mike. I ain't trying to put words, but
I agree. It's poisonous.
It's very poisonous, man, because if you are not responsible with the time, because that's another word that made me think about responsibility. Is I wrote it down. It's time. Time is a powerful thing, and if you misuse it while you getting your J's in the store and different things like that, you don't realize that you didn't value the time that you spent to make the money and was not responsible with that time. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Because if we realize that there's a lot of facets that come with responsibility, but we don't think thoroughly enough of the operation and the functionality of responsibility. I think we're only focusing at times only little small things of responsibility like accountability and liability, but there's a lot more like time, efforts, the impacts. You talked about the consequences and different things like that. It branches off to so many things that we don't think about. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna just leave it right there for now.
No, it's good. I mean, that's what that's kind of bringing my mind to is that I think that awareness is a big part of responsibility.
I like that.
Right? Because being aware that, okay, I'm passing you on the highway and I cut you off, right? That action may have some response, and it happens in our city a lot.
Yeah.
That road rage incidents end up being, drive-by shootings on the highway, right? So I might just cut you off, not thinking about, hey, that person might get upset and might retaliate, right? So having the awareness that, man, anything I do, anything I say, I have to be aware that there's going to be consequences. Yeah. There's going to be something I have to answer for if you're mature enough to sit up there and face it. And to walk understanding that, okay, I'm going to be mindful of the things that I say and the things that I do because I expect to be there to answer for them. Therefore, let my actions and let my words be something that's going to bring me results that I'm okay and that I'm happy to answer for and to be accountable and responsible for, not things that are going to bring me pain, harm, discomfort, or frustration or whatever, right? So being aware, your words and your actions have you're going to have consequences to those things, right? Mm-hmm. But then being aware that how to look for, okay, man, this happened, this person doesn't like this person. Did I have some part in that? Well, if you told one person, something bad about person, the other person involved, yeah, you had a hand in that. These two people have beef now because you went and dragged one person's name through the mud to the other person, and now they don't get along or they got into some kind of argument. So, being kind of aware enough to kind of think a little bit ahead of, if I do this, what consequences may arise? If I say this, what consequences may arise? And letting that factor into, should I say or should I do this thing?
Yeah,
right?
That's awesome. Another thing that I was thinking about is, and I agree with that totally, is the safety. And that's when, remember I was talking about the other mechanisms that will be involved in responsibility. And I do believe that safety is in responsibility as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that there is no harm done when responsibility is at its full attention. I really believe that. I believe that when a person is responsible for their action, even if there's harm that can possibly arise in the processes of this, I think that a person responsible and a mature individual will try his best to avoid harm, and that safety can continue in some regard. I think it's I was thinking about, like, at our jobs and whatnot, sometimes what if you have an irresponsible manager, right? Now that manager has a duty, he has a job to do to manage his crew. If he falls out of line of his I'm trying to think about a word, managerial duties or whatever the case may be. If he's not responsible, and he sides with one side, depending on whatever the case may be. I was just thinking about that little. I had a thought in my head concerning it. It's not. It's fleeting right now. But I was just thinking about someone that's in charge. No, okay. Here's a good one. Let's go to Scripture. Let's just think about the Lord Jesus, right? I believe the Lord Jesus was very calculated, and he was very he was responsible of a task that was, to me, in my mind, for my understanding, greater than any man that was on earth. It was very incumbent of him to have a full understanding of the words that came out his mouth, right? The words that came out of his mouth and the actions that ensued as well, right? That's responsible because another thing is he had people following him. Whenever you are a teacher or you have someone following you, there's a responsibility that an ownership. That's the word I was looking for. It's the ownership. It's the ownership
That's
of
good.
the duties that take place, and you're responsible. And not only that, see, that's what I'm saying. That this responsibility branches off to so many things because are you qualified? That's another thing. And are you honest enough with this responsibility? And are you qualified to actually lead people? You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying. Like if I'm a 16-year-old, and I know I was a mess when I was a kid. I was not responsible, right?
Right.
And I started thinking,
territory.
It
Comes with the territory.
It comes with the territory,
for
right?
sure.
But I started doing things as if I was an adult. Right. No, I was not prepared for that. I was immature. So therefore, with my lack of understanding and my lack of knowing the proper ways of thinking, not valuing things, I put myself in a situation, the consequences, that I did not know how to even escape from. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's where I really believe that responsibility and maturity really goes hand in hand. That's kind of what I was saying, you know, and maybe that comes with time, like when I was going back with time, you know what I'm saying? And, you know.
Maturity comes with time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Oh, no, I was just saying maturity comes with time. You know, understanding how to be aware or become aware of the things that you're responsible for and respond accordingly is something that can only really come with time. Like you mentioned, a 16-year-old young man is not going to have any idea.
Yeah.
And definitely, well, maybe not definitely, but in most cases, not the willpower to follow through on the things and behave in a responsible way.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, no matter what your behavior is, you're still responsible for whatever you're responsible for. That doesn't change.
It's true.
You know,
That's true.
when you're of school age, you're responsible for keeping your grades up and, you know, things like that and going to school. When you're a little older, you're responsible for keeping up with whatever bills you've accumulated or you know whatever. You're always responsible. If you take care of it or not, that's a different story.
That's a good point. The consequences are there.
Exactly.
Whether you face them or not.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so I think that it was a good point to bring up that most of the time it's going to come with some time. It's going to probably come with some failures and, you know, bumping your head a few times.
Absolutely.
Or more than a few or a lot, you know. But over time, we start to realize the impacts, to use your words, the impacts of behaving responsibly and how much better life gets.
Yes.
When you accept the inevitable responsibilities, because like we said, you're always going to be responsible for something. And accepting those responsibilities and facing them head on and finding a way to strategize and be responsible for the things that you're responsible for, or behave in that way is a major deal, and it goes a long way towards expressing somebody's maturity. You know, somebody being able to declare, I'm a more mature person than I was at some point before, because I, number one, am more aware of my responsibilities. And number two, I take action towards them. I do what I need to do to make sure that my responsibilities are handled in a reasonable way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
What about the empowerment, like the empowerment stages of responsibility, where a lot of times you are
Take your time, Pastor.
what if the responsibilities were handed to you, right? And you didn't really know you had the abilities to do it. Are you feeling empowered or stressed?
Stressed.
Yeah.
For me, I can't speak for anybody else, but it usually starts off with stress when it comes to getting new responsibilities or realizing that you're responsible for something that you didn't really realize was going to be on you. You know what I mean? The initial response is usually stress. Or
No, I think you're right.
You're right.
It comes back to the maturity thing you were talking about, right?
yeah, well, I'm just saying I don't know if stress is necessarily the right word. I mean, it does come with some discomfort, but I don't know if it has to be stress. It doesn't have to be stress. It can be discomfort. It can be uncertainty. It can be, a lot of different things. But
Yeah.
stress,
Definitely uncertainty.
stress is something that you gotta.
I think it's the awareness thing. When I think of like the kid on Game of Thrones who was the king, right? He was having fun torturing and executing people.
Joffrey.
He wasn't stressing, right? Because his maturity was not at a point where he recognized these things are going to have consequences that I'm going to have to answer for, and it's going to make my life miserable. He ended up getting beheaded, I think, in that show, right?
Poisoned,
right? So his actions,
best show ever.
Yes, it was great show. He wasn't thinking about, man, these things that I'm doing and that I'm saying are going to make enough people mad that eventually somebody's going to come and poison me, and I'm going to die at a very early age. He wasn't stressing because he wasn't mature enough to recognize the weight of the power and authority he was given. Whereas maybe somebody like a young King David, at a teenager becoming a king, recognized like, man, this is a huge weight I have on me, and would have been stressing because even being young was mature enough to recognize that I've been given a great responsibility and a great weight to carry. You know what I mean? I think it's a matter of, again, the awareness of a person and the maturity.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily know that it has to be stress.
No, it doesn't have to be.
You know what I mean?
It doesn't have to be. Right.
Because bearing a weight is stressful, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be stressed, because stress is and maybe I'm just defining it differently, but for me, stress is a negative thing. There are a lot of challenges and responsibilities that we each have that are heavy. But that doesn't mean that they have to be a negative thing. It doesn't mean that they have to stress us out. It could be something that's challenging, and it could be something that we attack as any other challenge that we put ourselves into or that comes to us. A challenge is just that. It's a challenge. It's a roadblock. It's an obstacle. It doesn't necessarily have to be stressful.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's interesting, because I work with guys at the plant level that will probably look at that and disagree.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Because their health deteriorated. But hear me out one second, because I actually agree with you. Mm-hmm. Does that come with the individual though? Is there a sense that you're being stressed but you don't necessarily have to be? And is that fair for us to say that to someone? I'm only speaking that as a question. I'm being you know what I mean? Like, to me, I deal with stress a little differently, right? Like, I was stressed at the plant, but I didn't lose my mind. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So is this a individual approach, or is it something that individual need to learn that they don't have to be stressed in this? And how do you get to that point? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It to me, like, it is an individual thing.
Yeah.
It's a mindset thing.
Correct.
It depends on your perspective of your own life and circumstances and the world at large.
Absolutely.
Because I'll give an example from my own life. Right now, the career that I'm in right now, I just started. I haven't even been in for a year yet. It's one of the it is by far the most challenging undertaking I've ever experienced. Mm-hmm. And there have been times where I've allowed myself to be stressed.
Gotcha.
But that doesn't mean that it's necessary to be stressed, because, for instance, right now, the work that I'm doing right now is more busy than it has been in this entire time that I've been there, in terms of what I'm doing. You know what I mean? The work. And there are peers that I have that are stressed every single day.
Yeah.
There are people that come in and I can see they look gray.
Yeah.
They don't get enough sleep.
That's what I was talking about.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
They're exposing themselves to vice in an unhealthy way. Like there's a lot that goes into for me to consider what stress really looks like. I'm in the same boat as them, but I'm not suffering.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that doesn't mean that I'm better or have anything, that's special about me. It just means that I look at it differently. I embrace the fact that it's as challenging as it is, and I've said that to both of you, multiple times. Sometimes I was faking it till I made it.
You got to do
being
that.
perfectly honest.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Sometimes I was faking. Sometimes I fake the smile, but I know I need to smile, because if I don't, and I don't mean physically smile, but I mean I have to have that smiling disposition, because if I don't, I'll be just as stressed as them, and I refuse. You know, I refuse. I've seen. We talked about this on the other one. Once you get to a certain point, looking back it's not even an option. And so I'm at the point where I choose that when things come along that would be or could be considered to be stressful or that are heavy weights to bear, I lean into it, and it's hard. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not saying it. It's extremely challenging. It's very hard. But anything that's worth having, anything that's worth any real value, is worth going through some sort of discomfort at the very least in order to attain that thing.
For sure.
And there are people who that concept doesn't necessarily resonate with, and that's okay. But those are the people that I see that are more stressed in general, And so, circling back around to the beginning, I really think it is an individual thing.
Yeah.
People who are in the plant, like you said, that are stressed because their bodies are getting beat up, they don't work out.
Yeah.
The only physical exertion that they do is when they're getting paid or they're on the clock. Yeah, of course, you got repetitive motion all the time and you don't take care of the rest of your body. Of course, you're going to be in bad shape. Of course you are. It's inevitable. And so that causes stress, but that's also an individual thing. That's a choice that person made, whether they decide to get off work and go to the gym, or they get off work and go home and sit on the couch and veg out. Yeah. Either way is, that's your choice. No judgment. Right. But I'm saying that if you're stressed in one, then maybe explore the other. You know what I'm saying? Make a different choice and end up with a different result. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You about to say something, G?
No, I wasn't. I'm good.
Yeah, because I think we have to have this conversation a little bit further, because once again, it's like it's things that we may miss in the process of the discussion. Because as you were talking about, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, if we see that an individual is struggling, struggling, that's going to have to be one of my other words.
Right.
So if you see someone that's struggling and burdened, your heart actually goes to them. Could responsibility be nudged for that person, where you can get that person to understand that they can strategize in such a way to organize themselves where and take ownership and responsibility? Because right now, when a person is stressed, and because of the responsibilities, they haven't taken true ownership over it.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That goes back to what you said about the person vegging out at home and whatnot. No, you haven't fully grasped what responsibility truly is. Because to me, in my mind, is you take ownership of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And not allowing something else to respond to you, so to speak, but you be more responsive to that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Proactive.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
There you go. That's it. Proactive, right?
Yeah.
So with responsibilities, that's where the maturity level comes, where you can see in the distance of maybe forethought. And that's another thing is like, okay, somebody says, okay, Mike or Ethan, I want you to take over this. I want you to take this side and blah, 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 blah. And this is what you need to do, right? The person would not give you that responsibility if he didn't believe that you couldn't do it. You know,
unless he's setting you up to fail. But yes,
that's another.
Right,
That'll be another. That'll be another. You know, but for the most part, for the individual, I do believe it's an individual thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And what do you want to become in the process, right? Some people set you up to fail, but you got to do yourself. No is an answer as well, too,
absolutely.
right? So if you feel at a job or something that someone is, and listen, this is disclosure. I am no psychiatrist or anything. I'm no therapist at all.
Right.
This is something that Ethan Merriweather does, and this is the reason why we want to do. Right. This is for let your words count. What we want to do is be responsible of the words that we utilize, and when they come out our mouth, what do they look like? Do we like the results? You see what I'm saying? So what I like to do is am I being responsible right now? And if the word is no, or if I don't understand the definition and the meaning of that word, right? If I don't understand that, how in the world my results are going to look like that? So it's very important for us to understand it and define the meaning of that word so we can look like what is coming out of our mouth. Am I being responsible? What does that look like? Okay. So I should be a mirror image of what that word is. Whether it's a good word or bad word. If it's a bad word, you need to remove that out of your vocabulary and out of your life. You see, that's the whole point. If it's a word that does not give glory to the Creator, to God, our Heavenly Father, then you need to remove that word out your life, because you want to be a mirror image of that which is good. To me, responsibility in its truest form is a positive thing. It's a beautiful thing, right? But you can't allow someone else to make you accountable for something that you feel in your heart that you are not able to do in some regards. So, and even that, you got to take that with a grain of salt, man. So that's just my thought. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead.
Yeah, man.
What were you gonna say?
No, I was going to say, you mentioned the question of whether a person can be taught to take accountability for the things that they're responsible for. I think maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I think maybe. I think that it's going to have to come down to a person. It goes back to that maturity thing.
Yeah.
It's going to have to come down to a person getting to a point in life where they realize without a shadow of a doubt that I'm the cavalry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to come and clean my room for me.
Interesting.
That's my job.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for the way my home looks. I'm responsible for the way that I feel physically in terms of, whether or not I keep up with my physical health or not. I'm responsible for, whether or not my, this does well or that does well or this happens for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When we start to take ownership of as many aspects of life as possible, we start to think in terms of I'm responsible for it.
Yeah.
There's this phrase. It says, "If it is to be, it's up to me." And that is a statement of responsibility. I'm responsible for what happens.
Yeah.
And so I have to think in those terms, and that'll guide my footsteps in the direction of the place where I, saying, towards the destination that I'm looking to get to based on whatever I choose to be responsible for or what is given to me as a responsibility.
Absolutely.
Every single thing I have to decide, I am the one that has to do this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's good. I'm also thinking of how there's a place or an avenue where responsibility is tied back to love also, right? Because there is a definition of love that talks about, both being willing to give or do for somebody that's in need, but also taking care of your own responsibilities to the point where you're not a burden on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So your way of showing love towards somebody else is I'm going to conduct myself in a way where you're not having to pick up the pieces after me. You're not going to have to come back and rescue me. And again, it's not that getting help or needing help is a bad thing. But again, if you can have the forethought, the wherewithal to say, if I do this, I'm not going to be able to handle the consequences, or this is going to affect somebody else. love would dictate that you conduct yourself in a way to minimize the impact of your choices, your words, your actions on the lives, if it's negative, on the lives of somebody else, right? You want to try to avoid negative results and consequences from your actions and words affecting somebody else if that's somebody that you truly love. So that's like another aspect of
That's awesome,
responsibility to think about too.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was real good.
Yep.
I want to use this as an opportunity to kind of close out a little bit, but one of the things that the key points that we were talking about, I think Mike was hitting a couple of things, and Gary definitely at the end right here said some things that I think that when you talk about love being a part of, and this is the reason why we haven't spoke about love yet. Love is a huge concept, is a huge reality, and it's a build up. We have to build up to love, because love is going to take a couple of episodes in my mind, right? Mm-hmm. But when you talk about a person that's trying to avoid responsibility, I think that speaks volumes to what immaturity looks like. Right. And the whole idea of adulthood is supposed to be maturity. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you really think about it, man, as you grow, there should be a level up.
Sure.
And if we are not leveling up, there's something you have to ask the question. It's imperative for us to ask the question. And if we don't know that this is a question that we need to ask, we need to find the reason why this is not the question to ask. Why am I not growing? If you have no responsibility, you are not going to grow.
Interesting.
In the story, flat out. Even nature have responsibility. Trees have a whole lot of responsibility. If you look at trees and the responsibility of a tree about what it emits, what it receives, what it gives, its roots constantly going through the earth, its branches is constantly, raising and stretching with the sunlight.
Interesting.
It's we have to think about that. I always think about nature in that regard. If nature in its purest form, animals are responsible of their own, man, who are we that we should avoid this beautiful thing? So as far as key takeaways from me, I think that I am going to continue down this route so I may mature and grow and hold myself accountable for actions so I can grow each day. That's my task. That's my task. And that's if anybody else have anything else.
I like your analogy to nature. I agree with you. I think that nature teaches us a lot about responsibility. Even the Bible mentions it. It talks about considering the ant.
Absolutely.
The ant spends time when it could be doing other things. I don't think ants really party as much, but it could be doing anything. You know what I mean? Right. But in the season of plenty, the ant puts away for the season that is not as plentiful.
Sure does.
That if that's not evidence and responsible behavior, I don't know what is.
Beautiful, man. That's right.
We look at squirrels do the same thing. Bears do the same thing. Trees do the same thing. Trees prepare themselves for winter. They shed everything that they don't need when it's when it's real cold and they can't provide for those leaves and fruit, they conserve. Yeah. And that's being responsible. They're conserving energy until it's a better time.
Beautiful.
And that's being responsible. That's having, like you said, that foresight, that forethought. Having an understanding that times of plenty are typically followed by times of famine, and vice versa.
Very good.
Being responsible in each of those seasons is the type of thing that allows you to have that growth that you're talking about. Because if a tree tried to keep all of its leaves and fruit throughout the winter, it would die.
Lovely.
You know what I mean? Yes. If an ant didn't put things aside for winter, if a squirrel, a bear, or any other animal that hibernates or whatever doesn't do what it needs to do for the time when famine comes, or the time that there's a drought or winter or whatever, however you want to describe it, if they don't behave responsibly in that way, they can't survive.
That's true.
And so we tend to get a little bit maybe ahead of ourselves in terms of like
Interesting.
taking things for granted. You know what I mean? Because I can go to the store and get watermelon 365 days a year. And I love me some watermelon. no, but I can go to the store and get watermelon all year long, right? But those are the types of things that cause us to be
hearing the ice cream truck song nonstop. Go ahead.
Dog, that's petty. Man, the devil just made me lose my thought again.
Responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Being responsible is something that we have to really take. We have to be intentional. That's the word I'm looking for. We have to be intentional because it's so easy to take it for granted. Yes. Like I mentioned, I can go to the store and get whatever I want at any point in the year. I don't have to wait for things to be in season. And so that type of mindset, that type of privilege can cause a person to lose sight of what they really should be responsible for. Because, even little items like that, it means that I can have whatever I want whenever I want, when that's really not the case.
So
you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So anyway, I hope that makes sense. I think it's important to consider the way, because nature is perfect. It's chaotic, but it's got an order to it, and it's perfect. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to consider all of those different aspects of nature and how nature shows us or teaches us about responsibility.
Interesting.
Beautiful.
I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
My closing thought is going to be, again, a challenge, right? A challenge or an exercise for us. And I think the challenge would be think through, right, in the course of your day, the things that you do and the things that you say. And think ahead a little bit, like you're playing chess. Think ahead a little bit and say, okay, if I do this or if I say this, what consequences can arise? And make sure, if you're being mature and being responsible, that you choose the actions and the words that will yield the consequences and the outcomes that you want. If the things that you do and say will yield consequences that you don't want, that's, again, maturity says reflect on those things and maybe choose something differently. And make sure that your actions and your words are not going to lead to outcomes or consequences that somebody else has to pick up for you. Secondarily, for me, I have a list of people in my mind that if I were to ever cross paths with again, I would apologize to them for certain things.
I'm right here, bro.
I ain't talking about you. But seriously, just think through times that maybe you've been less mature, less considerate of the impacts and consequences of your words and actions on other people.
Yeah.
And maybe it wouldn't hurt to try to go out and see if there's a way to reconcile your part, your responsibility in something that you've done or said, or apologize to someone that has been affected negatively by your words or by your actions, to show that a sign of maturity that you're taking responsibility for your words and for your actions. So think through your actions, your words. What consequences are these going to bring? Are those consequences that I want? Are those consequences I can handle without it affecting somebody else? And think back on times you've maybe been less responsible and see if there's something that you can do to try to reconcile or correct that as a way of you taking responsibility for your past words and actions. That's it for me.
All right,
hey,
everyone. Everyone.
Between me and me.
God bless you.
Like, share, comment, subscribe.
Like, share, comment,